Just want to confirm that you can hear me on your end. Fantastic. Well, thank you, everybody. My goal over the next 30 minutes is to help you come up with a few new ideas to take a lot of the content that you've heard about over the course of the morning, and then come up with some new ways of thinking about how to bring that to market, how to package that up for your local customers and prospects, and then how to maybe make some adjustments in terms of how you sell it. Right now, for those of you that haven't heard of Neural Impact before, we're a consulting organization. We're based in Canada, but we do work all over the world. And there's basically three elements of kind of our storyline. One is everybody in my organization, I am the founder and the CEO, comes from the technology industry. Most of us have 20, 25 years of scar tissue. What we know is the IT industry in a very deep and meaningful way. And we also know a tremendous amount about behavioral science, about neuroscience, about psychology, and what happens in the unconscious buying process. And we bring those two things together. And I just want to give you just a short inventory of the types of organizations that we work with around the world, kind of helping them optimize, the product development, optimize their marketing motions, and then optimize, how they sell. Now, over the course of the time we have together, we'll hope you come away with three key things. One, I want to talk a little bit about how significant changes that we've seen in terms of global buying behavior have had a material impact on what we are seeing in terms of what's working in the partner community, specifically within MSPs. Want to talk a little bit about what happens inside your customers and your prospects' brains in the middle of an active buying cycle. And I want to share some things that you can implement almost immediately from a psychological, tactical perspective, as early as calls that you're on tomorrow, to drive a different set of outcomes, right? Some things that you can do immediately. Now, there's the main thing that we've seen happening in the SMB community globally, specifically as it relates to, the global pandemic, is that there's been three major priorities that have really bubbled up in terms of demand, right? So number one, the obvious one is, you've got small, medium-sized businesses all over the world, and their first challenge is how do I get people working from home so that they can continue to be productive in the work that we have, right? So that was obviously step number one. The second step is how do we then get them to work in a secure environment? Right, and this is where the majority of the effort has been over the last couple of months is how do we help all of our customers get their people working productively from home, and how do we make sure that the data is protected and they're working in a secure manner? But the third thing that we're starting to see bubble up right now is now that we've got people working from home and now that we've got them secure, is how do we get them productive? How do we get them actually functioning at a higher level than what they were when we're working in an office? So the three things you really want to think about as you're putting together, what it is that you want to bring to your customers, what you want to bring to the market to capitalize on the opportunity that's in front of us is, do I have the right offers that are in place? Do I have the right services that are in place to focus on the SMB community so that we can support those three initiatives moving forward? And I'm going to argue that the third one is the hardest one to do, right? Is how do we actually help organizations use technology to be more productive than they were in the past? Now, I can tell you the one thing that you don't want to say when your customers and your prospects come to you, say, look, we need some help getting people working from home. We need some help getting them secure. We need some help getting them more productive, right? And when I talk about more productive, it's more than just, Microsoft Teams or getting them up and working in some of these remote collaboration tools. A lot of them are having to rebuild a lot of the business processes, right? And so there's it's more than just how do we get people functioning, kind of connected with remote connectivity tools. And I'll tell you that one of the last things that they want to hear right now is, well, it kind of depends, when it comes on to the price. How much is it going to cost to get us, up and running and productive? Well, it kind of depends on how many people and what the infrastructure looks like, and it kind of depends on how many people you have internally to help us out. Because from a psychological perspective, what we're basically seeing is especially in the SMB segment, people have moved into what we call capital or cash scarcity. So there's more of an emotional attachment to holding on to their capital than it is spending on IT projects, right? So when it comes to how much does this thing cost, the last thing you want to do is say, well, it kind of depends on a number of different variables. What you really want to be able to say at this point is, well, it costs A, B, or C, or here's the range, right? The last thing you want to do is say, well, we're not entirely sure. Right? So what we're seeing right now, and we work with MSPs and systems integrators and a lot of ISVs all over the world, is the organizations that have kind of prepackaged solutions that have a lot of clarity around what the pricing is in terms of both the project services as well as the managed services on the back end of them. Those that are really clear about what it is it's going to cost, they're actually seeing their business grow. Organizations that are tackling sort of these new projects from tell us more about your business and we'll try to give you, sort of a price range to work with, and here's the hourly rates. That sort of, well, it depends approach. Those organizations are struggling. Right, so the metaphor that I like to use around how to think about packaging up and pricing, your offers or your solutions as you go to market, is this kind of shift that we're seeing from a world where we're used to describing a list of ingredients. Here's all the different services that I have to offer. Here's all of the hourly rates that are associated with those. Tell me which ones of those that you want, and then I can give you a price. Right, which is very much how our industry has priced and packaged the majority of our offers for many years, versus, here's a prepackaged solution. By the way, it's already optimized for what it is you're asking for, and here's the price around it. So if you think about running your own business, ask yourself at this point, how much of the new estimates, the new proposals, the new pricing that you're bringing to your customers right now kind of come in more of a bill of materials, kind of a la carte menu, versus those that are saying, what, we prepackaged, we built something that solves your industry problems, or we built something that solves a very a specialized problem, and oh, by the way, here's what the cost is, right? So there's three main things that I really want to cover in the 30 minutes that I've got with you today. The first is I want to get you to think maybe a little bit differently about how you bring, your services and your products to market. A little bit less in here's an inventory of things that you can buy from us, and a little bit more around here's what we think you should buy to solve your business problem. The second thing I want to talk about is, okay, well, how do I bring that new offer or service to market from an engagement perspective, from a marketing perspective? And then the third thing I want to talk about is, okay, well, what are the implications around selling that? How can I sell a little bit differently in a remote environment? Right, so if we kind of continue along the theme of how do we package up our services, the other analogy that I often use is really around, the types of projects that we step into, right? So the image that you see in front of you is very much a tell me what you want and we'll build it for you approach to solving customers' problems, right? So this is more of a traditional kind of systems integrator. Tell us what you want, we'll build it for you. We can build a house for you, we can build a mall for you, we can build a commercial building for you, we can build mixed residential, we can build whatever you want, just let us know and we'll give you a price. And what we're seeing today, especially with some of the challenges that have bubbled up as a result of the global pandemic, is that, basically, especially in the SMB space, organizations are looking for what I would look at as a kind of a pre-built home, right? So I have a set of problems. I need to get people up and running, working from home in a secure environment, and now I need to get them productive. We need help with things like SharePoint configuration. We need help with things like remote whiteboarding. We need help with things like new business process design. We need some new applications to be developed that are quite small, right? And they don't have a lot of patience for, basically speccing out that and then sort of having an open-ended price around it. Now, what we also know, of course, is that there's two different margin structures around those two different types of offers. So typically when we see, MSPs, building estimates around tell me what you want and we'll build it for you model, you get sort of 30 to 40% gross margins on the left-hand side. And what we're seeing in terms of, MSPs and systems integrators building packaged offers that are somewhat repeatable and reusable and bringing those to market, you see the margin structure much higher in the sort of 50 to 60% range. So I wanted to give you kind of an example of what that sort of looks like. This is an organization, a North American MSP, that has put together 3 different packages that organizations could potentially step into. In an ideal world, you actually put your pricing on your website as well. But you can see here, they've got a small, a medium, and a large. The deeper that you get into the small, medium, and the large, the greater the functionality. But as a prospect looking for a new supplier, or if I'm been referred to you from one of your existing customers, I go onto your website, I can see immediately that they've got these 3 different offers, 3 different packages. I'm going to kind of gravitate towards one of them, and then I'm going to click the button and I want to talk to somebody about what exactly is included in there. Right. So this is just a very simple, basic one that I think kind of captures sort of the essence of what I mean by putting together a packaged offer. Right. So the next thing I want to pivot to, once we've got sort of an offer defined, right, a little bit less, tell me what you want and I'll build it for you, a little bit more of I'm going to package something up, I'm going to bring it to market that I think addresses some meaningful business challenges, is now I'm going to have to go and kind of create some demand for that. Now, from a customer buying behavior perspective, the old world, I spent about 22 years, selling in high tech. And for the most part, this was what the world looked like. Marketing was responsible for, identifying some potential prospects, generating leads, throw them over the fence to the sales organization. And then, of course, the sales team would then carry the majority of the work and try to create a customer out of that, right? So the sales organization did the majority of the work. Right now, this isn't new information to anybody out there. Like, this is kind of content that we've been talking about for years. But the majority of the work now is being kind of carried out by the marketing organization, because prospects are doing a lot of their research themselves. There's a higher probability that a prospect is going to find you, a new one, more so than you're going to find them. Right. So the marketing has taken on a much bigger role in helping partners kind of communicate what it is that they do. And even if your business is driven primarily through referrals, right, which is what we typically see with most of the MSPs that we work with, right, their net new customers have been referred to them by their existing customers. The first place that those new customers go is they go to your website to say what it is that you do. So marketing is really, really important in kind of warming the plate. The sales process itself has condensed quite a bit. It doesn't mean that it's not important. It just means that the body of work that sales professionals have to do today is actually quite condensed, right? So as a buyer, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the marketing side of the equation, self-educating, a little bit of time with sales. And then, because we've seen the average deal size kind of get smaller over the years as people move to more subscription licensing, we need to now kind of upsell, cross-sell, and sell more things after we have what I'll call project number 1 complete for the first time. Right. So what you can see here visually, of course, is that marketing has become more important than it has been in the past. Each one of you as business owners are going to look at this in a little bit of a different light, and say, well, you know what, we actually think our sales organization, covers more of that body of work. But I'm going to tell you, there's more marketing in today's customer acquisition business processes than there ever has been in the past. So what I want to share with you is kind of a handful of interesting new ideas that you can think about, implementing to make that marketing motion a little bit more compelling. Now, there's 6 emotional engagement filters that I want to share with you, right? Then you can implement in a lot of different ways that we know from a neuroscience and a psychology perspective have a huge impact on how people kind of form opinions about your organization. So I want to take you through each of these and give you an example. Now, the first one is about tribal engagement, right? So 151 is a bit of a magic number in the kind of behavioral science world. It's the maximum number of relationships that your brain can actually manage. Right? And the reason that we have such a finite number is that because for the majority of the time that we've been on the planet, whatever period of time that has been, we lived in relatively small groups. And so our brain developed the capacity to actually manage 151 relationships, but no more. This is a finite number. It's fascinating stuff. right? But what that tells you is that when we're with what we look at as tribal members, people who kind of deeply understand us, we feel safe. And there's a number of ways to kind of create that, what we call that tribal connection. Right now, the first thing, and this is the one that people hear about the most, is, boy, if you're going to create an offer or a set of services, you want to focus in on a specific industry or vertical. And that is actually the easiest way, for you to develop that kind of what I'll look at as a tribal connection, right? So this is an example of a partner that is a managed service provider, and they focus in on medical offices, right? So if I'm a medical office, a dental office, I find this organization, I'm going to probably reach out to them before anybody else, because it's clear that they deeply understand my business and my issues, right? But that's not the only way. Right. So a lot of times when we talk with MSPs, they're like, well, I don't want to limit myself to a certain industry. I want to cast the net as wide as I possibly can. Now, if you actually go to this particular partner's website, PTG, you'll find that they've got 4 different segments that they focus on. Right. There's medical is one of them. They also focus on lawyers. They also focus on manufacturing. But so regardless of kind of where you find them, you're going to go to their website, and if you recognize that, boy, they understand HIPAA compliance and medical, I'm going to probably reach out to them first. Now, the second way of really engaging with people at a tribal level happens more at a persona level. So this is one of my favorite websites from a partner that has got a simple sort of 2 buttons on the landing page that says, you know what, IT is my day job. Show me what you can do for me. Right, and these are going to be technical people. They're going to speak a certain language. They're going to be interested in a certain thing. But then the other side is, hey, you know what? IT is not my day job. I'm a business person. Hey, how can you save me money? So depending upon which one of these buttons I click, I'm probably going to get a completely different set of content. One is about business value, and the other one is about sort of the technical side of what you can provide as an MSP. So a different way of driving that tribal engagement. Right. The second thing you can do to really connect with people emotionally is to use what we call visual engagement. Right. So the part of your brain right now, right, that's listening to my voice moves at about 40 instructions per second. It's not very fast. And you're trying to take the words that you're hearing, you're probably trying to convert them into your own local language. Right. It's very taxing on your cognitive system. But the pictures that you're seeing in front of you are being processed by a very different part of your brain, and that part of your brain moves at about 9 million instructions per second. It's like comparing a 286 to Azure. And so when we only rely on language, we pass up on the biggest opportunity to engage people emotionally. This image that you see on the left, you can see it's wrinkled. I took it out of a magazine in an airplane once. It was the best contrast image I've ever seen of an organization trying to communicate that a private cloud is better than a public cloud. Now, I don't believe that to be true, but you can see from the image, everyone would really rather have their own infinity pool than a crowded pool in a hotel, right? So it's a really good use of imagery. Right, video. There's an image there of some content that we have on our website. Our entire website is populated with video. We know that when people connect and click on the videos, we get them on site for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, versus when they're reading content on our website, we can capture their attention for 1 or 2 minutes. Right. So even the interesting sort of, I call this the creepy Jason. Right, so this is a marketing study that was done. People had an option of clicking on a picture of a telephone or an image of Jason, and there was a 2 times conversion in clicking on the image of an individual, a real person, because people can relate to that from an image perspective. So the second piece of information I give you is really anchor in hard on using the power of imagery, of video, instead of language on your website and in all of your marketing content. The third thing I want to talk about is emotional engagement, right? So there's sort of 6 core emotions that are really important. Only 3 of them you want to work with, right? So fear, joy, and surprise are 3 of the most powerful emotions that you can connect to people with. And I'll give you an example of how that kind of played out in our own organization. I was asked to put together some content, some work for Microsoft around how to sell and market differently as a result of COVID-19. We created this phenomenal video. It ran for about 3.5 minutes. It was filled with all kinds of interesting content, and I got about 4,500 views as a result of that marketing campaign. One of my colleagues was working on a piece of work to present at Inspire. She was at her cabin in the mountains. She looked up, there was a bear staring at her. So she took a picture of the bear, posted it online, and she got 55,000 views. Now, there's no content in here. There's nothing I can use. There's no value, right? But it's the difference between tapping into the emotion of fear or the tapping into, the emotion of curiosity, right? And this thing got forwarded and forwarded and forwarded. And my wonderful video filled with all kinds of ways that you could kind of capitalize on COVID-19, it tapped out at about 4,500, right? So just the impact of what happens from when emotions are involved. The next one is verbal engagement, right? So look at these words here and, ask yourself how often, they show up in the verbiage on your landing pages, on your marketing material, in your sales pitch decks. Right now, all of these words here, I see them in almost every partner website. They're absolutely dead. Right. So based on a very fascinating study that was done on managing what happens inside people's brains when they hear these words, whenever your brain encounters one of the things that we've just talked about here, greater productivity, easy to use, scalable, manageable, reliable, powerful, innovative, unique, great, best, because so many different industries use those words in so many different ways, it doesn't actually know what to do with the word, so it ignores it, right? So be very, very precise about the language that you use. And the last engagement component is around simplicity, right? So because our brain makes up about 3% of our body's mass, but it consumes 24% of our body's energy, what it does is it actually punishes things that are very difficult to understand. It punishes complexity. So these two assets you see in front of you are both Microsoft assets. They both describe what the cloud is, but nobody is going to read what's on the left. Everyone is going to gravitate towards what's on the right, because the left has to get processed by that 40 instructions per second, and what happens on the right is processed at 9 million instructions per second. Right, so you can have the same content in two different ways. The brain will always default to, well, what is the easier of the two to consume? Right, so again, simplicity is a powerful psychological engagement one. And if there's one industry in the world that overcomplicates everything, it's ours. And when you're focused on the SMB community, that is one community that really doesn't understand a lot of the IT language that we use. So what I want to do is I want to kind of, bring this part of the presentation to close now around, okay, well, what kind of implication does that have to sales, right? Mark, you talked about sales being compressed. It's important to kind of bring offers to market that are packaged, that are easy to consume. It's important to kind of leverage the psychology of engagement to build kind of marketing materials and a website around that. But really, at the end of the day, how is my sales team going to behave a little bit differently to close these transactions? Well, because sales organizations have basically, they're inheriting prospects that have already done a bunch of research and in many cases have already formed strong opinions. Right? Now, I'm going to argue that in an on-premise world, right, I lived in this world for over 20 years. I was a senior sales professional for a lot of big high-tech companies. I can tell you is that our best work was always done in the middle of the sales cycle. That's solution selling. That's what we were all trained on. Do a little bit of discovery up front, but then really get into what does the customer really need, and then try to find some kind of a unique solution that you can bring to the market that nobody else can replicate. And then generally the end was sending them a proposal or sitting down and walking them through it. So the sales skills that I needed to be successful in an on-premise world was really focused on the middle, not so much at the beginning and the end. And I'm telling you, in the cloud, and especially today, where you've got people doing a lot of research up front, the solutions are very much commoditized. Right, so it's very difficult from a technology company's perspective to bring something to market that's completely new, or that you are the only one that's representing. So we need to do our best work at the beginning of that engagement cycle as a sales professional, and we need to do our best work at the end where they're making a decision as to whether they're going to go forward with you or another competitor or not do it at all. Right. So one of the things that I've seen as a result of COVID-19 is that I've never seen so many delayed projects, so many canceled projects. Right. There's a higher probability that the opportunities that you have in your pipeline today will end in a no decision than they will in a funded project. So we need to start to think about doing our best work at the beginning and at the end. And I want to share with you the sort of the three customer profiles that you're going to run into. Right now, one, hey, I want something that's special and unique for me. Two, I want a lot of functionality out of the box, right? But I still want some configuration and you want some customization. Or three, I'm just going to consume whatever it is that you are going to be offering up. I'm going to use it out of the box. So there's three different ways here kind of taking a photo, and these represent the three different buying profiles that you're going to see in today's cloud market. And the challenge that you have is that you're going to be driving three different sales motions around this, right? So if someone wants if the iPhone is sufficient for them to take pictures, well, that's all that they need, right? So it's going to be what I call a volume sales motion, probably 3 steps, 5 calls or less to close the deal. If you want someone with a little bit more functionality, it's going to be more of a value-driven sales motion, and you're going to have more interactions. Or if you have the final one, which I call the snowflake, which is I'm special, it's got to be unique for me, well, then you're going to be driving more of a traditional 5-step solution selling model. And the reason that I share that is because today, most sales professionals only drive a single sales process, regardless of the buying type. And it's usually anchored in what we've all been trained in, which is solution selling, which is the bottom one. Right now, there's 3 things that I'm going to share with you that I'm going to encourage you to start to do differently. And then we're going to wrap it up with a bit of a summary. Right. The single most important thing that sales professionals need to do differently in today's market is they need to do more research before they pick up the phone and talk to a prospect for the first time. I could talk about that for an hour. Psychologically, when a prospect has done a bunch of research and they know more about you than you know about them, and the call starts, what typically happens is they feel like they're being interrogated. There's a huge correlation between high win rates in sales professionals and the amount of research that they actually do. Right? So spend more time doing research, look at more tools, things like Crystal Knows, which is a LinkedIn add-on that provides a whole bunch of psychological profiling about the individual that you're actually going to get on the phone with to sort of get inside their head a little bit. Do more research. The second thing, you want to move to virtual whiteboarding. If you're going to be selling from home, you're not going to have the benefit of kind of meeting with clients the way that you have in the past, or you're not going to be having as many on-site meetings as you used to. You cannot do discovery using your voice alone. Right. So when you move from tell me about your business, what are you looking for, to popping up, let's just say the Microsoft Whiteboard app, and then sketching out what it is that they're looking for, you go from tapping from the 40 instructions per second into the 9 million instructions per second, and you get a completely different version of the truth. So the 2 most important things that I'm telling sales professionals right now, 1, do a lot more research before you pick up the phone and talk to the prospect for the first time. And the second thing, pivot as much of your discovery as you possibly can into more of a virtual whiteboarding environment. So here's the takeaways that I've got for you, right? What I hope you took away from this discussion is that prospects are probably going to find you first before you find them. So know that sort of the way you present yourself on your website is going to allow them to form some strong opinions. Use more of those emotional engagement components that I talk about to really draw them in. They're going to be looking for packaged offers, right? And so we've kind of moved from a horizontal to a specialization world. What I hope you took away is that marketing is super important. Use visuals, build packaged offers, get your sales organizations to start to think about more prescriptive selling. So a little bit less, tell me what you want, and then we'll build that specially for you, to, you know what, this is what other MSPs are doing today. Here's what we recommend that you actually step into. And then the last piece, of course, which is around the sales organization, is if you're going to be investing in a sales process, you want to invest the majority of your time and energy on the front, which is where the psychological decisions are made, rather than in the middle, where you're going to be describing what all of your competitors are probably bringing to the market as well. So I hope you found some value in that. I believe I was put at the end of this session because you've been exposed to a lot of really interesting new product information today. What I hope you did with the content that we just covered is to come up with some new ideas of how to bring those new products and some of those new services to market.